Well, welcome to the next episode, the finale of season 1 for Strategy Sessions podcast. And I'm joined by a very phenomenal group of people who I definitely enjoy talking to whenever we do get a chance. We have a return visitor from our premiere, Breana Turner, as well as Madison White and Jayla Goodloe, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves in a minute. But before we get started, I do want to just thank everyone who's been listening this season for your consistency, keeping up with me, even when some of the episodes were a bit non sequitur. And I really wanted to focus this episode in on communities of women, especially Black women, around mental health, given all that we're seeing in the world right now, in the Olympics and just in social culture. So I'm pulling together this group of friends who have been a community for me throughout a lot of the transition I've experienced in the past 2 years. And we've all had our own individual transitions as well. So without further ado, I'll allow them to introduce themselves and let people know what they want them to know about them. And then we're going to hop into the conversation. So welcome, you guys.
Hey, thank you for having me back. So I am Breana. I am a recent Master's of Public Health graduate, and I'll be starting my PhD program in the fall in translational biology, medicine, and health. Super passionate about empowering women in all aspects of my life, and I have a mentoring program called Sisters with Ambition for middle and high school young women. And I also would say that I'm a certified pageant girl, using my voice and my platform to amplify, again, women of color, and bring awareness to the importance of overall health and well-being. So I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation today with these amazing women.
Hi, I'm Madison. I am a graduate of Brown University with a degree in international relations. My professional focus is global health and development. I have had a really unique life that has been surrounded by massive amounts of women. I have never been in an environment where I've been one of, only a few women. So it's been, a very unique approach to just relationships and fellowship. I have 2 sisters, went to an all-girls school, played on all women's lacrosse teams. So women are at the center of my life, and I'm really excited to talk more about all that women bring to the table. So thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. Yeah. And last but not least.
Sure. I'm Jayla. I'm a graduate from Syracuse University with a degree in public relations and information management and technology. Currently consultant, but aspiring publicist lawyer. Want to bring more Black people into the entertainment industry when it comes to our voices and what the public how the public perceives us. And I'm really excited to be here. Black women are really the center and like the epitome of my passions and every aspect of my life. So really excited for this conversation and to be with you all.
Awesome. It's going to be good. I'm excited. Okay. So I'm going to kick it off with a general question, but we're just going to get a whole little conversation flowing here. So I guess it's a big question for the first question, but like, what is your root philosophy? Like, how do you ground yourself, or what do you ground yourself in? What anchors you, so to speak, and why?
This is a hard question. I saw your email with these questions and I was like,
man. I had to think for a second.
Yeah, that's why I was like, let me send them ahead of time so it's not an on the spot kind of thing.
I mean, but still, I can't answer this from the gut, but I will jump in so that I can get it over with. I've had to do a lot of unlearning when it comes to my root philosophy, and I guess the best way I can describe it is just rest. I feel like I have always been, a go-getter, a hustler. My pride was in meeting and surpassing whatever expectation was put in front of me. But that is really unfulfilling in a lot of ways. It didn't teach me my intrinsic value. And so particularly, with the pandemic and being stuck at home and trying not to feel guilt about not doing things or frustration about not doing things, I've kind of transformed what I believe to be patience into an understanding of rest, that it's okay to just be in this moment. You don't have to try and be getting from one to the other. Now, I'm not married to this philosophy. It's a practice. It's really difficult. Resting is hard, especially when literally everything is telling you to do the exact opposite. But I am trying to root myself and rest. And I'm not quite sure how to ground myself in that. I think that is just engaging with the thought of like, am I resting? Like what am I feeling somatically? What am I feeling in my body? Type of thing. It's hard, but it's so far so good. It's worth it, I think. I love napping, so that's really what it is.
We all love a good nap.
Good nap.
That was so wise, because I just recently saw an Instagram post and it was like, we're human beings, not human doings. And I said, now wait a second, don't read me for filth, because that's crazy. But there's just so much value in being still, especially as a Black woman. It's like we have to earn our rest, earn everything, and that's not the case. I would say that for me, it's letting go of the expectations society places on me as a woman, and then taking that further as a Black woman. So that also comes with a lot of unlearning too. Being that I grew up in Northern Virginia all of my life, I feel like I faced a lot of like microaggressions and just flat out racism. And I was always trying to be the thing that people wanted, not be the thing people wanted me to be. So I had to be super articulate. I had to do all those different things, and that's fine because that's who I am, but I don't need to placate to somebody else or try to make someone else comfortable with my Blackness. So that's like an ongoing process for me. That's something I tell the girls that I mentor, that it's never your responsibility to fit into the box that society wants you to be in or someone else wants you to be in for their own comfortability. As far as what anchors me, which is really funny that that's the word to use because of Transformation Church's word of the year. Yeah. So I'm a woman of faith, and I would definitely say, God anchors me, being able to be rooted in the word, and then also have amazing friends and accountability partners for me to lean on when life gets a little bit rough, which it definitely has been over the last year. But I would definitely say that saying of not fitting into the box society wants me to be in, and then also finding my worth and my value through God and being anchored through him really helped me.
Love that.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm a Transformation Church watcher, so hearing the anchor definitely resonates 100%. And I think that's not something that I realized until I think I moved so quickly in life for a long time that I never took the time to really understand, okay, what is helping me move through life and how do I ground myself? And I think the past couple of years, I found a lot of peace in that, understanding my spirituality more, making sure I'm around the right kind of people. That has really helped anchor me and like building my relationship with God as a woman of faith as well. But I would say my philosophy in life is, and as cliche as this sounds, is constantly just remembering what's for me is for me and leaning into that truly. I think everyone has so many timelines. We all put up timelines as, motivated individuals, but it's really just leaning back and knowing that whatever purpose and vision that we have it for a reason, and just enjoy the journey. And that's something that I've been having a lot of conversations about lately, and really just patience and knowing that things will come together when they're supposed to come together, and just taking the time to enjoy that. So I think that philosophy has really helped me when pursuing my goals, but also just enjoying life. I think we have to remember that we're Black women and we deserve enjoyment. We deserve the good things, and we deserve to pursue our passions, whatever that looks like, and just allowing that to flow.
Yeah, I love all those. I feel like mine kind of is like, in a way, it's like a combination. And I think just we're all women of faith here. So it's like, I've really learned, and I guess mine is seasonal as well. I mean, not to say that it changes, but I feel like I'm always building on something. So there's a philosophy that I'm focused on in the season. And right now it really is that, like, as long as my alignment with God is in the right place, everything else is like in the right place. And so there is this, because before I felt like I had this need to control all these different aspects. Like, okay, I got to manage my relationships. I got to manage myself professionally. I got to manage myself when I was in college, at school. I got to manage, stuff going on at home. And I have like completely divorced the idea of any particular like profession that I had to be in, or any particular space that I had to be in, because I put that limitation on myself, or I put that benchmark of like, by this age you have to be here. Like, all of that is from culture. And it's this societal pressure that I feel like Black women feel even more so, because you have these like kind of deadlines for yourself, but then you also have the hurdles of getting there, and then you feel like worn out and you are consistently like needing rest. And we all need rest, it's a requirement, but it's also like you're burning out quicker, so your ability to kind of go longer is very stifled. And it was not conducive to my well-being, but also it wasn't sustainable. And I really had to like kind of undo a lot of the things that I thought I wanted, or I thought, or the person who I thought I was, like after college, and start to kind of rebuild my internal like structural framework. And all of that really came from like, how aligned am I with God? Because I used to be like, oh yeah, like I'm aligned. I'm like, things are going well for me, so I'm aligned right now. And that's not synonymous with being aligned, because you can be aligned and things could be falling apart around you, but because you know you're aligned, it's okay. I've lost close relationships, but I know I'm aligned, so I'm okay. And so it really does kind of mix in the need for rest, the need for kind of being anchored in the need for like kind of positive community as well, that can be like, okay, like I understand like you're going through this, so I can like pray for you. I can like, one of the things that I love is at the end of every call I have with Madison, she's like, what are 3 things that I can pray for you for before our next check-in? Or just like in general, kind of, I know Breana and I send voice notes all the time of like, girl, listen, this is going on. And then Jayla and I have our check-ins where it's just like, I'll be like, are you free? Because we need to talk this out. And it's having those people who are anchors around you, so that you're like, oh, okay, like we're all trying to be out here in the deep. And so my alignment with God is also something, or their alignment with God is something that they're prioritizing, so we can all be aligned together. And when that happens, like I know I'm grounded, because I'm grounding myself in like the most omnipresent, omniscient thing there is. So I can't really falter when that's my position.
Yes.
Girl, when you said in the deep,
anyone else
yes. He was preaching. I was like, we got Sarah J. Roberts.
I'm not Proverbs. I'm screaming.
No, but for real though, just to quickly just hop off of something that you said, I feel like one thing that is changing for like women like us in the church is not allowing our relationship with God to be weaponized into like checking boxes and like meeting goals. Because that's the thing that I feel like I've been like mostly trying to be in conversation with God about, because it's like, God, if I do this, or if I'm praying about this, then we're walking in that direction. That is not how he works. I can be talking as much as I want and he's still walking in whatever direction he's pointed out.
Right.
But just choosing like not to feel guilty about that, I feel like faith and that relationship has been weaponized of like, well, if you're not on this path, then what are you doing? But the thing is, if he's watching over me, if he's dictating my path, I could take literally whatever step I want and I'm not off the path. Right. That's how it works. And so just resting in that, like I'm chilling, and it's so hard to do that because I'm not actually chilling. But I'd like to be, just like believing that you said you're in control. So let's see how it plays out. Like not like, like testing God or like, placing a bet with him, but literally being like, this is how you said it was going to work. Let's do it your way. And really like being okay with that. That's super hard, but like, that's kind of, it's not like how we're supposed to do it.
Super fast. Yeah. Like, recently I learned that I can actually question God and kind of test him a little bit, because he's not afraid of the test. And I think that was really hard for me, because grew up in the church was like, you can't question God. Like, but why not? If I can question God, I can question you. I can question people that are like talking to me crazy. God wants us to question him because he's not afraid of our questions. And I just think about the story in the Bible where the man like put out the fleece and was like, okay, God, make the ground wet and the fleece dry. Yeah. Yes. And then make the fleece wet and the ground dry. Like, if he can do it, why can't I? I mean, it probably won't happen the same way, but I'm just saying, you can ask questions.
But like whatever that fleece is in your life,
like,
that is a metaphor for how we're supposed to pose the question. You know what I mean? Like super clear. And then getting in the details and having a very real expectation of God. Like, isn't that where you're like picking up his mantle and he's taking yours, and you're like, I'm expecting that you do it.
Yes. And I'm working towards it.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I love about like the new generation. And I don't want to say the new generation, but like our generation, and how a lot of us grew up in like the Black church, and we were told like, you're not supposed to question God, you're not supposed to test any, like you're not supposed to test him, like what does that relationship really look like, you know? And so it's dope like being in the conversations like this, because like this is how a lot of us are starting to navigate our relationships with him. And it's like the peace that comes from that, like it's hard, don't get me wrong, it's hard, but it's like, it's knowing that that relationship can really manifest in that kind of way, which is just a cool way, like a cool thing to think about for sure.
Yeah, it's like one of the things I love that my pastor is doing this year is he's only preaching from the Gospels, because he was like, I feel like at the end of last year he had this like 5-week series about like jaywalking, like walking like Jesus, and he was like, I feel like the church has really gotten away from like Jesus. They have all this other stuff going on, but like it's just not Jesus. So he's like, that is what we're supposed to emulate. So even if he's talking about like relationships, or he's talking about like financial freedom, he's like, everything of how do you live your life can be found in this 3-year ministry. So he is, and I was like kind of surprised. I'm like, a whole year worth of sermons from the gospel, like that's a lot. But like other than 1 week where he did kind of step outside to like make a different reference, like he's been able to do that. And a lot of it really has rooted back to like people's church trauma, and like just breaking down fallacies that like were not, that they're just not true. And so when people talk about questioning God, I'm like, literally Jesus questioned God. I'm like, and he is a manifestation of him, and he already knew what he was there to do. Like, do I really have to go out there and let these people do this to me? Like
regularly.
Regularly.
Our friend, that's the thing.
You can make this stop.
Right.
And I think I pray that almost every day. I'm like, you could get this under control. I know you can. So
and it's wild, because it's like, how did we go from the presence, rather, because they had literally the presence of Christ in their life physically, to this like subservient, like domineering, like there's one thing to have a reverence for God, but it's like, I tell people all the time, like, you forget, like, he's your father. Like it should be, there's humanity in this, there is a love in this, and not to say that like he can't correct our path, but I'm like, people are fearful of him in like this fire and brimstone kind of way. And I'm like, I'm just grateful to have a relationship where like, and I pray in a sometimes a more formal way, but I can be like, hey, look, God, listen, listen, like, and he's right there, because I understand that his presence is consistent. So it's just interesting, to your point, like, I do think this generation is really like, this generation of believers is coming more into that understanding. And I love that for us. I love that for what that's going to do for the next generation, because there's one thing to have, like, I think older generations have a deep sense of faith that is tried and true, but I do think that there are a lot of harmful and really damaging practices and beliefs that a lot of churches have based themselves off of, that have led to other people being hindered in their actual life, because when they try to apply what they're learning, it's not applicable. So I love that point. I don't know, a whole faith-based tangent, but I love it. I'm going to pivot a little bit and kind of talk about, as we're sitting here, this community of women, what does sisterhood mean to you? When you think about whether it be little sisters you have in your own life, or just the practice of communing with other women in your life, what does sisterhood mean to you guys?
That's such a fun question. Yeah.
Just sorry to jump in, but it's magic. Go ahead.
No, it's just such a fun question for me, because I feel like I have like different sisterhoods and different aspects of my life. Like, I'm in a sorority. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. But then also just like the sisterhood I have with my mentees, and then just like my pageant sisters. And I think it's like it's magical. It's super magical. And it's a group of Black women. There's accountability in a sisterhood. There's love. I'm gonna check you too, which I feel like is a little bit different than accountability. Accountability is like, you said you're gonna do something, but I welcome my friends to also read me for filth lovingly. And so I just feel like sisterhood is just multifaceted, and it's so needed, especially in this time. Like, I've gotten closer to my sisters and my friends, despite the fact that we've been virtual for the last year, because we have like a shared like commonality of like, I want to check in on you. I want to make sure you're doing well. I want to make sure you're achieving your goals, but also resting at the same time. So just, I don't know, just magical.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely magical. I think sisterhood is everything. Like, I think I'm rooted in sisterhood, and that has helped me drive my life. Like, I couldn't imagine what life would look like without people like you all, without, and like community in general, like my people. I definitely like sent a voice note to 2 of my friends in Boston, because the other day, because I moved to Boston, didn't know anyone, like I was not in a good place, like asked Abby all of this, and I was like, y'all, truly, I want you to know that this relationship has helped me so much, and I'm just so thankful to be able to be surrounded by people like that. And I don't know, I just think it's love, and I think it's safe. I think it's so good to be able to have people around you who have like-minded thoughts, but also like are ready to challenge you, like you said, read you for filth lovingly. Like, let me know, but like lovingly.
Right.
Right. Tell me about myself, and that I can do the same. And like, you know, we can kiki, we can talk about faith, we can talk about our journeys and everything like that. I think it's just something so powerful, and I really pray that everyone has people around them that they can call their sisters, because it's truly not something that you can compare to.
I totally agree. I think of sisterhood as like, you know, like the 5th element, you know, there's like fire, water, earth, whatever. Like sisterhood is definitely one of them.
I love that.
Like, you can't make it up. Like I don't know where it came from, but it just exists, and it's so crazy powerful. Especially like having grown up in a household, I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and then having gone to an all-girl school, and then a women's team, and then teaching women, like it's not a mistake. Like just the immediacy with which women are able to find and understand each other is just crazy, especially when you remove, you know, like controllable variables like men, like white men in particular, and you just like allow whatever happens to happen. It's really just kind of overwhelming. I'm having a really hard time like concretely describing what sisterhood means, because it's been everything other than like the concrete and the tangible and the touchable. You know, like most people, when they see me and my sisters, along with saying that we look very similarly, we sound the same, we talk the same, we think the same. And I see, you know, completely different people, because I think we're completely different people. But I also understand what they're getting at is just like a fellowship that feels like just like magical and mystical and crazy and weird. And I understand why people like want to tap into those relationships, or when they see like a group of girls, or like, I want to see if I can get in with that, or, you know, be intimidated by like women who clearly understand and love each other, because you can't replicate it. Like you have to be a part of it. You can't just force it. I mean, like even this conversation, most of us are really just meeting each other now, but like there was just a social contract that we all have agreed to in this space to be honest and vulnerable, because we know there's no consequences, because it's not about a power exchange. It's about, you know, like, here's what I'm bringing to the table. Can you share this with me type of thing.
At this point, I'm ready for the meetup. Like,
right now. Honestly.
And welcome to you in Boston. There you go.
Please.
Look, okay, because the first time I went to Boston was to visit Jayla, and she was like, okay, like I'm gonna let you know now, like the Black people are in pockets, but okay, like just understand what I'm saying. And I was like, yeah, like I went to whatever.
I have to give
and
warning.
we walked into this space for brunch. When I was like, everyone looked exactly the same. Like it was just, I couldn't even describe it. And she was like, close your mouth. And I was like, literally like, this is the reality. And I think it's also like being from a place like PG County, you know, Jayla, you're from Atlanta, like, and just even you guys are from like the DMV area. We still, even in the diversity of space, like there's still like a lot of Black people around. So when we go to school, yes, we might be one of few, or when we go to certain classrooms or maybe certain after school activities. But in general, like living life, there are people around. And so I was like, but in terms of the whole, like what you were saying, Madison, which I think I love, is in terms of like being that 5th element, for me, like sisterhood really is life-changing, because I think about when I was in middle school, I had a lot of guy friends. And then like when I was in high school, being at Madeira, it was like, okay, I have all these friends who are girls now. And then even so, like I still had, you know, guy friends or whatever, but I saw like a massive transition in terms of I don't mind like having guy friends, like they're cool or whatever, but just transition in terms of like the quality of my friendships and like my deeply rooted friendships were like all around women. And so as I got to college and out of college, just like building programs or doing things to like to build up the community is all very women centric and women focused, because I recognize and have experienced that like when women get together, things shift. And as a group of just natural incubators and innovators, like what we are really divinely crafted and purpose to do like is to cultivate. And so there's just something that is a great dynamic about women who aren't in competition with one another and can genuinely see the benefit of having other people with different experiences and skill sets around. And so you can kind of bring a group together like this that hasn't really met before, but there's the commonalities of saying like, okay, like I see what this person is doing, I see what they're about, and like I want their success and I can root for them even if I don't know them. And so I just see like the cultivation of women-centric spaces where women can be empowered and not in competition with each other as these spaces to literally like change the world, like change people's lives. Because like when there's just something that's so dynamic about when we can kind of congregate and do it in a peaceful and productive manner. Which is why I just like hate when I hear women say like, oh, like I don't really get along with girls. Because I'm like, that signals something about
Red
you.
flag.
That signals something about you, because I'm like, all women aren't messy. But if you don't get along with other women, that says a lot about your ability to dynamically interact with other people who are different or have different experiences than you. And it typically is rooted in some kind of insecurity. But I was like, I literally even like check, okay, like noted, and then I like kind of move forward. Like we probably should have some space, because in a minute or so, you're gonna find something wrong with me too.
Also, like, what does that mean?
No, honestly, what does that mean? That came through my mind. What do you mean you don't get along?
Also, my question is, do you get along with men? Like, that's
also, do you like yourself?
You can't get along with women.
Do you like yourself?
If you get along with men, that is a problem. That seeks healing.
And people make it like a personality trait, you know? And it's like, no,
I have more
like,
guy friends.
I want that for you. Like, please find some good women. Like, you're not going to find that power. Like, read The Sacred Woman, read something. I don't know.
I'm like, you must be exhausted. Truly.
Because
like,
especially in our age group, so you cannot tell me, I don't care who you are as a girl, you cannot tell me that you spend your time with 23, 25-year-old men and are like,
this is the way. Like, this is the way. No.
The trauma.
Especially heterosexual men? Absolutely not. Like I was like, now maybe queer men, I'll give you that, because like they have like a different sense of like empathy. But like I was like, you spend most of your time with straight men and you're like
they don't even understand our experience. Like go sit next to another woman, please.
I'm like, go get your nails done. Like, don't just be in, the physical presence. Go share air with another woman for like 10 minutes.
For 10 minutes.
The feminine energy, like, I don't know.
Feminine energy. Let's get into it, because.
And it's like, and that's the thing, because it's like, are men inherently bad? Like, no. But I also know that, like, based on the conversation, based on the conversations I have, it's just like where I feel like a lot of dudes are just at this stage and age of their life. And then like what I'll hear those same women say that they're looking for, not even just in partners, but just in like their life experiences. And like those two things are not aligned. That really feels like you will get along with men because you want to be liked by men, but it doesn't really feel like I get along with men because they're actually my friends. So like, let's unpack this here, because there's typically something around that that's not what you think it is. But sis, I see you, I would pray for you and keep it moving.
Like,
I will say,
sisterhood for everyone, please.
I will say, not that I don't think the phrase ever out of my mouth has come that I don't get along with women. But I will say because I've had so many women in my life, did feel like I had reached a saturation point. I was like, I've done my part for the cause, like love women, cool, but like enough. And then I moved to Beirut, Lebanon to do some hands-on work in a refugee camp with Palestinian and Syrian people. I first got there and I thought I was just gonna like teach, like mainly kids, but then it turns out that they had brought on more men volunteers than they had anticipated, and they needed someone to teach their women and girls class. So they asked me. But I'm not gonna lie, I definitely had an attitude. I was like, man, I didn't want to do this. Mostly like the adult portion, I was like, I don't want to teach women. Like I've done enough for women. it was the best thing that ever happened to me. All I care about is women. It was the best 6 months of my life. I think about all like 60 something women that I worked with pretty much every day since the last 2 years. I mean, it was just like, I've never seen anything like it. And I eat my words on being like, I've done enough for the cause. I will have never done enough to like cultivate sisterhood and womanhood. I mean, it was just like truly, you know, like you talk about modern day miracles and like what that looks like in modern day prophets. And I feel like going back to like our faith conversation, I had been looking in the wrong places for manifestations of that. And I'd been avoiding what society had told me to avoid for looking for like miraculous work and miraculous turns. But it is in women. It is in the least of these, or what we're told is the least of these. It was just phenomenal. So like, just wanted to put that out there.
And how would you say to that point, because I know you were in Lebanon and you also were in Uganda, like how have those experiences, or I guess we've already talked about that to a certain extent, but can you elaborate on just like what that's done for just your personal, like your sense of self and like your personal development?
I mean, it really does come down to just like the unlearning thing that I was talking about with the philosophy of just like really understanding that, particularly as a Black woman who'd grown up and worked in and been around and educated in predominantly white spaces, there were just so many lies that I had bought into. And being like face to face with completely alternative realities and completely alternative existences in women that I fell in love with. I was like, this is what truth is. Like, this is truly the only thing that matters. Like, I'm working in global health and development. I'm a consultant and I'm very grateful to be employed and have this job. But like my heart has been completely ruined for women, only women. Like it's the only way that any of this stuff is going to get fixed. And it's in the data. Like, for example, I was teaching this class of women and the age range was from like 26 to 72. And I had this one student in particular who was probably in her 40s, absolutely brilliant, and just like was so thirsty for knowledge. And we found out from the other people in the camp that she'd been taking my lessons and teaching them to the kids in her building, which made those kids eligible for English testing in the Lebanese public schools. That had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. That was a woman of her own volition in horrendous circumstances, cultivating community and laying down the groundwork for the next generation. Crazy. I'm just like, how do you know that teaching the ABCs to someone is going to change, you know, like other people's life, just through women? That's how. So amazing.
I'm stepping on the soapbox with you because my favorite question I always get asked in like state interviews is like, how do you get men to care about women? I'm like, first of all, why do I need to placate to you, whatever. But I'm just like, when women are healthier, women have more knowledge, societies thrive, communities move forward, and the world gets changed. So like, to your point, like if you educate a woman, you educate a house and it educates a whole village.
Yeah, so, and not as leverage for other people's
not as leverage.
No, not as leverage for, yes, exactly. And people are literally healthier. Like, I don't know, investing in women's public health.
I was going to say that, like, women, statistically speaking, like, even, like, naturally, right? Like, so whether, obviously, we're animals, but not, like, regular, what we consider animals. So, like, even animals, like, women are going to teach their kids instinctive traits, whether that's from lions and tigers and bears, or you even have, like, even when you look at slave codes, right? So Virginia slave code is probably one of the most notable slave codes that was ever created. And when that's created, the emphasis on breaking women's mental psyche, because she will train her children to have a mental psyche that is also broken. So they will be subservient and very docile from the beginning, and you won't actually have to break her children if you break her. Understanding that, like, and I think we get into this kind of, not even argument, but to your point, Breana, I have a lot of guys be like, well, if you're so focused on women, then go do that because she's gonna do. And I was like, the fact that your ego's hurt right now says a lot about that as well. But when you think about, even in our communities, a lot of the Black community really is matriarchal. And when we see Black women, as they say, like, if you make the position of Black women better in society, you would literally make society better for everyone else. So when you're talking about the marginalization of people based on just race, gender, socioeconomic status, like there's intersections for Black women with all of those. And if you focus on directly the things that impact Black women most, those things, because of how Black women are impacted, would trickle down to a different degree. Whereas when you talk about men, it's like with a lot of men, especially when it comes to like race, outside of racial issues, you're not necessarily like equating a lot of, different things. And a lot of men, regardless of race, if you change their position, they're more likely to then individually move from position to position. But men just in general, like naturally, are not as likely to bring communities with him. And it's not to downplay men. That's just like scientifically, like psychosocially, that's just not, I guess, like where men are dominate. Whereas because women are cultivators and because we look for community, we look for community in how we share our emotions. We look for community in how we process things. We're naturally going to be like, oh, this is going on. Let me, bring at least one or two people with me. And if those one or two women bring a couple other women, now we have a whole group going. And that's not necessarily something that's natural to the male species in general. So I feel like people get hopped up on this thing of like, oh, like you're so pro women. What about men? Especially as a Black woman, I feel like there's this pressure to be like, why aren't you talking about Black men? I'm like, why aren't Black men talking about Black women in a positive way or in a non-sexualized way? Or in a don't be my mom way. Because I'm like, if we want to have that question, we can have that question. But until you can answer those, let's not ask me. Thanks. So it's definitely a cultivation point that is backed by nature and it's backed by science. But I don't think it's something that we as people like socially pay attention to enough, for sure.
Yeah.
But, I didn't know if you were
No, I was going to say one more thing because I just feel like it needs to be addressed. My favorite comment I ever get from men is like, well, you're getting all these different degrees. Like, how are you going to find somebody? Like, you're going to have a hard time. And I'm just like, hold up. If I'm going to have a hard time, you should see the squad. Because at this point, you are the company that you keep. Iron sharpens iron. I have my friends that are business owners. They have multiple degrees already. They're doing things in their community. They're traveling by themselves. So if I'm having issues, the whole squad's going to have quote unquote issues. And that's not even our priority. So
that's what I was about to say. I'm like, why is that even a question?
Not even.
Like, no, like, why is that supposed
why
to
does that have to
something for me?
Right. It goes back into like putting us into societal boxes. Like, why is that a question? Can't you recognize that we're trying to move forward to help our communities?
Yes.
And just to sprinkle a little on top, it's just like in this whole faith conversation, I was talking to my brother the other day, and this was also, I was like, you keep in the company of like just different kinds of men is like very but what I was talking to him about was like you're talking about like God defying our expectations. And in the conversation I was like, people will limit Black women especially, like, oh well, if you're educated, that already checks off a box. If you have money, that checks off a box because of the stats. And I was like, I understand the stats. I do understand that Black women are statistically more educated than Black men. I do understand the stats that Black women make on average more money and are more likely to be the breadwinners in their household than Black men. I understand all that. At the same time, I'm like, I also do understand statistically that I am a Black woman who graduated from a ridiculously expensive high school and went to a ridiculously expensive college and graduated with honors. And that statistically is unlikely to happen. And I do understand that I'm a Black woman who's 2 generations removed from a cotton farmer and a cowboy / like house mover who worked in these agrarian, backgrounds, and I should not be where I am. I was like, I do understand I'm a Black woman who's traveled by herself, who like owns her own business. Statistically, I'm not normal, and statistically, my friends are not normal. So why am I going to, with a God that does not limit me, who has obviously allowed me to defy a lot of the statistics that are average, then limit myself to the realm of just what's natural down here? And on top of the fact that that's not my focus, it's just like there's so many control C, control V's of me that I know in my life. Like we're all like, slightly different, but it's like the ambition, the hustle, like all of that is in the same place. So it's like, is that really the reality or no? Like we are the minority. I understand that, but I'm like, even in the minority of us, like we're still out here doing it. And I was like, so if we have a God that defies our expectation, that allows us to see that he's like we've defied societal expectation. Like, no, we're not sitting here holed up like, oh man, like just can't get a man. Like shucks. Like, it's very much like, all right, like, go do your thing then, bro. Like, okay. So I'll get off my soapbox with that, but that literally bothers me all the time.
No,
like,
we're glad you got on it.
Yeah, I'm really glad. Preach, girl.
That went in a whole different, we started from sisterhood and got all the way there. But in that, so a lot of, we talked about like sisterhood, magic, and just being grounded and rooted and all that kind of stuff. What generally would you say keeps you inspired? Like, maybe it's not sisterhood, it could be anything, but just like, it's inspired / motivated. Yeah, I'll not ask 3 questions in one, so I just ask that one.
So for me, there's 2 big things that definitely keep me motivated and inspired. One, I think about my little kid self, like thinking about Breana, 4 or 5 years old, looking at the high schoolers at Bible study do their homework in the hallway. And I was like, you're reading all that, you're writing all that, like, that's crazy. And just thinking about, would she be proud of the woman that I am today? Not necessarily always rooted in accomplishments, rooted in my character, rooted in my drive, my determination. And if I think that she would be happy about who I am, then that's something that definitely keeps me motivated and inspired. And then just thinking about the girls that I mentor and the girls that I come across at different like speaking events, like I am doing what I need to do and going into rooms so that they have an easier time. They can continue to move mountains and make grounds. And just being like childlike is so important, no matter how old or how mature I think I may get. Sometimes as adults, I can overthink this thing called life. And I'm just constantly reminded, like, sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to have the confidence in yourself, do the things that scare you, and realize that you're not only paving a way for yourself, but you're paving a way for someone behind you. And that's truly what helps motivate and inspire me.
I love that. Or you gonna say something too? Sorry.
Oh no, I can go. I was just saying I love that too. What motivates and inspires me, I think it's a bit of like the past, and the future. So in the sense of the past, like growing up in the South, just understanding like when we're talking about couple generations ago, like where our ancestors were. And, when they always say like where our ancestors' wildest dreams, and like being in the spaces that I've been able to be in, it's just mind blowing, just knowing like where people have gone to get me here. And so I think that definitely inspires me because I want to be able to do that for the next generation of people. Like I'm so thankful for the mentors and the community that's around me that has helped build me up. And so in everything that I do, I want to be able to make sure I can give that back to the future generations and help build them up as well. And I would say like, I think we're all surrounded by really dope and great women as well. And I think that in itself inspires and motivates me because, when you're in these conversations and you're just hearing people chase their passions and their dreams, but at the end of the day, they're rooted in just great human beings, great people. And that just makes you want to be a better person in yourself as well, and make sure that you share your light with the world. So I think it's a little bit of the past and where the people that have brought me to where I am definitely help inspire and motivate me, parents, community, whatever it may be, but also the future and seeing people stand up. Like we're talking about the Olympics, we're talking about Black women, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, all of them, just seeing them stand up and tell Black women, like, it's okay, mental health matters and stuff like that. Like seeing that in real life, in real time, it definitely helps inspire and motivate me to make sure that I'm helping the future generations as well.
I love that.
That's really good. Sorry, I had to turn my camera off. I had to charge my computer. But I would say that I just really see myself as a global participant. Like, I think I just like believe what I do actually matters. And I think it's can be overwhelming to believe that because you're just like, there's so many people, like, how could I actually be doing something that matters? But I think like, if we all felt a little bit more deliberate about the things that we're doing, even if it's just like for your own bubble, things could actually get a little bit better. And I want to see things get better. I just feel like there's so much on our plate as a globe, as a community, particularly for Black women. Like we just shoulder a lot. But if I can choose to be intentional and set examples for, like my inner child and like, how that manifests itself for other little girls that are out there, then it's actually gonna tip the scale in a more positive, beneficial direction. I don't know, maybe it's stubbornness. It's just like the belief in willpower, but like, why are we here if not to do something? And that impact can be scalable. It doesn't have to be like the crazy things that you dream of when you're like, 5 or whatever. But I think if we approach life with that same, just like, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it because I'm 5 and I can, then, things would actually work out.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's again a combination of those answers, because I definitely look at my younger self and I look at like my future self, and it's like we're all like sitting in a room having a conversation, like present me, like the young version of me and the older version of me. And then it's like when I feel like, okay, like I don't feel like doing this, like the older version of me is like, look, I don't get to exist if you don't get your stuff together, so I'm gonna need you to pull it together. And then the younger version of me is like, I'm just happy we're not who we used to be, because I can acknowledge that like we were cool, but we had some stuff going on. Like, dang, look at God. Like, thanks for not being that person anymore. And I think collectively being rooted in that understanding that what I do matters, and that for me, I'm really big on social organizing, in the sense of like, I love bringing like-minded people together, because I'm definitely that friend of like, you would really be like, I feel like y'all two would be good friends. Like, in sometimes my friends, like they never connect or whatever, but it's like, I just see like the similarities, and I love bringing good groups of people together. And like, for me, like my love language is quality time. So like, if I get, to do a check-in call or just like spend some time with my friend, like grab lunch, whatever, that's really where I feel grounded, especially when I get to do that with like my women friends, because I feel very rooted a lot of times after those conversations. Like, it's good to just spend time with good people. So just the understanding of the fullness of myself, as well as the full impact, or at least I don't think we can ever understand the full impact, but the impact of what I do in relation to the fullness of myself, is definitely, I feel like, what keeps me kind of pressed towards the mark, so to speak, and really generally inspired and motivated. And I wanted to build back on, I think, Jayla, you were talking about your point about the Olympics. And when we talk about motivation and inspiration, a lot of the Black women, like I remember pre the Sha'Carri Richardson situation, like I was seeing all these different memes of like, oh, Black women are going to run the Olympics this year. And like, and all those Black women are still our motivation, from Naomi Osaka to Simone Biles to Sha'Carri Richardson. However, like they each have had their own experiences, and seeing how they have been treated by the press, by other people, has been a very sobering experience. But I feel like it's also a reminder of like, to me, it's like, this is actually how like people feel about Black women and their mental health. But if you guys have any thoughts on that, or like have kind of made any reflections on that experience, as we've noticed these like now kind of younger social cultural icons make themselves the president, and put themselves first, or get in trouble for trying to cope. Kind of, if you have any thoughts on that, I'd be interested to hear them.
I can talk about this all day.
We can get into it all day.
I know this one could be truly its own podcast. But I was a college athlete, so this strikes particularly close to home, especially because I was in a predominantly white sport. I played lacrosse in Rhode Island, so I get what you're talking about, Jayla, just everyone looking the same, everyone being the same. And my recruitment story is special because I didn't play lacrosse until I got to high school, which is very rare because it's so competitive early on. It's also an incredibly privileged sport. There's a lot of money that goes into it, but I just was athletic and I loved it. And so I got recruited, but I was injured all the time. I hardly ever played. And only after graduating did I realize how much Black women are only valued for what their performance. And I had to reckon with that, understanding, like I had this athletic capability, I had this passion for the sport, but I was only used in so much as I was good to the team. It had nothing to do with what the sport meant to me and just like the athleticism of it all. And so watching you know, Naomi and Simone and Sha'Carri just demonstrate that so publicly. Like, it's not even like they did anything on purpose. They were just like, I am a person. And that statement is so simple, but so powerful. I think there's a lot of permission in that. It's like, I actually don't have to play by your rules. Where did you, like, why are these the rules? And unless you can give me a convincing or a real answer, a stirring answer, I don't have to play this game. And I think there's a reckoning that's happening not only for Black women, but across the globe for how things are working. And I'm probably, you know, revealing my politics a little bit, but we don't have to play like this. Like, we do, this is not how it has to be. And that's a really hard statement to come to terms with, especially when you've built your life around a certain system, you know, believing that I've earned my spot on this team, or I performed in this way and I'm letting people down, or there's these expectations. All of that is fake. None of that is real. And I think there's healing in looking at the people in your community being like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And then if we're all seeing what I'm seeing, or if I'm seeing what you're seeing, then we can collectively step away. And I think the next step, and what I'm really eager to see and what I'm hopeful to see, is the collective stepping away. I think it would have been a lot more powerful if, you know, Sha'Carri's teammates had been like, well, we're not going to compete either. Or, I mean, there was actually, this is not related to Black womanhood in particular, but the United States fencing team has a player who's been accused of sexual misconduct. And he's still allowed to play because he's white and obviously and whatever else. But his two or three other teammates wore pink masks in protest, basically being like, we don't want him on our team. I am looking for more like collective movement like that, generating from Black teams and Black communities and Black women in particular. Like, if we all just quit, if we all say, we're not going to do it this way, then what are they going to do about it? What's next? And that's a hard expectation and a hard request, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like we're all getting that vibe of like, why are we so eager to please this group that's bleeding us dry type of thing? So.
Literally bleeding dry and not looking at their athletes as humans. No, they look like them as machines and say, okay, you're going to represent us. But then when you can't, and we'll praise you all along while you're giving us these medals, while you're giving us, you know, the US or whatever country, right? Because it's not just the US, it's so many different, it's like, back to you, Madison. I love how you're bringing the global point of view into everything within this conversation. It's making my mindset change as well. So I love that. But I think it's just the idea that, I'm trying to think where I was going with that now. But I think it's just the idea of, you know, we're told, or especially these athletes and like Black women in general, like, you need to do A, B, C, and D, and that's not the case. And I'm really hoping, like, when you say the collectivism, I'm hoping that it's showing people like saying no is just as powerful as saying yes. And we're just taught, and we're structurally like created to just say yes, 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 yes. And that's just not the case, especially when your value is attached to what you can give. It's not attached to who you are as a human being. And that's what we're seeing. And so I really do hope that there is a lot of change that comes from this. And I think it has been super sad, but it's also been the reality that we know how outside people look at these athletes and look at people who are just supposed to be performing and just forget, like, they're humans. Like, the whole Sha'Carri conversation just blew my mind, because I'm like, how can you tell someone else how to cope? Like, I don't know.
I feel like this just reminds me of when I said that I'm a Black woman and I'm enough, because just like, if we think about the history of the world at this point, Black women have always had a stereotype that we have thicker skin, we can withstand more pain. And in a way, we had to adopt some of that for our own survivalship and internalized racism, which also is rooted in survivalship, but that doesn't make it right. But in the process of trying to make ourselves not human and be superwoman, society has continued to perpetuate that. And so when I think about Simone Biles, particularly this week, because I talked to some girls this week and I kind of had a superwoman complex conversation without calling it that, but I had them look up the word strong. And if you look at the literal definition of strong or strength, it's specifically talking about objects, inanimate objects, not necessarily people. It's being able to say like this object can withstand force and pressure. But we've adapted that and put that on people. And yeah, there's a time and place to have strength and be strong and be resilient, but that does not need to be someone's sole identity, and it does not need to be Black women's sole identities. Because we're allowing all these other people to have conversations about mental health, but all of a sudden when we see it take place on this global stage, if she had a broken ankle, we wouldn't think anything of it. But her mind's not, Simone Biles' mind is not there, and she could literally die from landing improperly. All of a sudden it's an issue. And so we need to, I feel like collectively as a society, I mean, obviously Black women, we're talking about it, but more people need to sit down and be like, what's the issue with viewing Black women as humans? And I read an article from Harvard, and it basically was like, because Black women are no longer commodities in terms of capitalism rooted in slavery, society's having a hard time grappling with the fact that like we're actually demanding equity, we're actually demanding to be treated like humans. And that's just crazy. And I mean, I can keep going, I'm not going to, but it's just crazy how we need to teach history, one, properly in this country, and two, understand the good, the bad, and the ugly. And maybe that goes in the CRT debate a little bit, but it's more so we need to teach history properly first. History of women, history of Black women, so people can have a better understanding about the stuff that we face, about the stereotypes in the media, about why they can treat Simone Biles this way. But I don't know her name. That little tennis player that's like, oh no, she's weak. Da 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 da. She's not angry.
Oh,
you know, yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know her name.
Yeah,
honestly, no more screen time for you. So.
I don't know her name. But I'm just like, why we have obvious discrepancies that we can see in real time. We need to have conversations about that. And history is not supposed to be warm and fuzzy all the time. It wouldn't be history if it's that way. But we need to have a serious conversation. If we're truly saying, I think we are, we value women, we value all women, let's act like it.
All of that. Because I have so many thoughts on this, and you guys touched on a good number of them. Like, I just to kind of second or third or whatever, all that's been said, I don't know. I just feel like it was such a moment of like society reaffirming, like, we expect Black women to put their bodies and minds on the line for us. To Breana's point, like, oh, if she, lands and messed up in her Yurchenko double twist, it's fine. Like, she can break her neck and we'll just say like prayers for Simone and keep it moving because another Black woman put her body on the line for us and it just didn't go well. Or, if Naomi has a nervous breakdown, like, in front of everybody, we can be like, oh, prayers for Naomi, like, but at least she put her body on the line. Even Simone Manuel, who we haven't really talked about as much in this Olympics, but she only, I think, qualified for like a few events, fewer than before. She had an interview prior to going to the Olympics where she talked about her mental health struggle and how COVID made a really big impact on her. And it had been such a struggle because out of the 4 qualifying competitions she had, she only qualified in the last one. And that had also beat up her mental health as well. And then we get to Sha'Carri Richardson, which is like, it's such a problem for me because for her to be as young as she is, and I think about my own experience, my own grief, like my mom passed when I was 22, and for several months I was high and focused. Like, it was like, oh, like Abby's here, but I was in my room, like gone, like, and that was just my coping mechanism at first. And so to me, to see a young Black woman who is on the global stage, is, fastest woman in the world, we're saying this, and she's getting all this acclaim. And at the same time, she has such a big blow really, happen to her. And then she goes and competes and breaks all the world records the next day. And then a week later, it's like, oh, yeah, but she was smoking weed. And it's like, do you think that you could be where she is doing what she's doing and go and break these world records and not have some kind of coping mechanism? Y'all just thought like she was just so straight laced and it just, it just didn't happen to her, that she was just going to like not think about it and go run these races at the speed. And I'm just like, first of all, it says a lot that she was beating y'all at 10 seconds with weed smoker lungs, okay? Because that's a lot. But secondly, I just had such a deep amount of empathy for her because people are like, well, she knew the rules, whatever. And I'm like, she did know the rules. And I'm not excusing that she didn't know the rules. She even took accountability for that. She said, I know what the rules are. But then my next question, rather than being simple-minded, is to say, how much grief do you have to be in to know the rules and know the stakes of what's at stake and say, I still need to move forward with this anyway, because that's the only way that I'm going to make it through this experience. And I have a lot more empathy and compassion for her in that regard. And it doesn't mean like, oh yeah, you know, she just should have been doing whatever, but it's just the ability for me to see her as human. And the fact that it's so difficult for other people to see her as human, yet they will ride for Bill Cosby throwing Quaaludes in people's drinks for 40 years, or, you know, they'll, you know, ride for Donald Trump. And it's like, you literally cannot see a 21-year-old in grief, but you're okay with that. And it's just like the most mind-boggling thing. So I had to remove myself from a lot of those conversations, because I was like, what you're affirming to me is that you don't care about Black women and you don't care about Black women's mental health, and that you believe that Black women's mental health should exist within the scope and realm of your acceptance. But if the roles were reversed, that wouldn't be okay. And you would expect Black women to carry you and be there for you and empathize with you and be compassionate towards you. So I don't have the capacity for it anymore. And I tell a lot of people, if we want to maintain the minimal relationship that we have, like, keep that opinion to yourself. Because if it's not, oh my gosh, like, you know, what could we do better for Black women? I got nothing for you. I have nothing for you.
The continued commodification of Black women's bodies, which goes straight up to, what is it, the transcontinent or the transatlantic triangle. Like, this is like, that is what this is all strictly rooted in. I mean, like, not to, you know, deviate from the conversation of Black women as athletes, but just like talking about like the Black female body, BBL.
Don't even, that's a whole separate podcast. If you knew the thoughts I had, listen.
That was the first operation on
literally slice and dice every aspect of my existence except for my soul. Like Simone's mind, like Naomi's mind, Sha'Carri's mind was at risk. Like I and you were just like, well, you know, we came to see a show and we didn't get the show, so we want our refund. It's not a show, it's an existence. Like, what's the phenomenon of the Olympics, what's so amazing about watching these athletes is that they are people. Like, that's why the Olympics are so cool, is that you have all the same things I have, but you can do something with them that I couldn't even dream of. But when you bring in the intersectionality of critical race theory of human existence, which comes from a faith-based perspective, then it's all out the window, because we're not people. We are concepts to be attained, to be moved towards. That's why Black women, Black people in general, but particularly Black women, set cultural standards. Everyone is moving, like, we, in addition to needing to look back at history, which can be painful and embarrassing and hard and difficult, and really needing to teach it properly, Black women are the future. That is why there's so many eyes on us. It's because we are literally generating, not only biologically, but socially, what comes next. And when we pose a threat to what comes next, by choosing to focus on us now, everyone loses their minds. And it's just like, well, we're people. How are we supposed to guarantee existence when we can't even guarantee our own existence right now?
It's the back to the object. And it's for people, but we're looked at as objects. What can you do for us?
Yes. And I just also want to add that Sha'Carri found out that her biological mother died via a newscaster.
Yep.
After a race. I found out my grandma died on Facebook and lost it. I can't imagine finding out from a stranger that someone died. And I feel like people were like, oh, she should have known not to do it. Can we please shame the newscaster for telling her?
Like, what were you trying to get out of that? What was your end?
That's entitlement. I'm entitled to the moment when you find out you lost the person who brought you into this earth. The entitlement.
It's
about to get real.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I learned. I was like, okay, like, this is when no one to hold them, no one to fold them type of thing. I'm like, people, because especially if it's a man who's like, what do you think about Sha'Carri Richardson? I'm like, let me ask you this: if you don't think that, you know, there should be more empathy, don't ask me the answer to that question. Like, if you are not where humanity should be, don't have, this is not a debate, because this is not a topic of conversation for debate. Like, this is a statement, this is a stance. Either we're talking about a stance and we're going to have a conversation about mental health in the Black community as it relates to Black women, or just general culturally, or you're going to embarrass yourself and make yourself look like an asshole, and then eliminate the fact that we even really need to converse with one another, because I don't have time for you to disrupt my peace. And it's just like, it's such a it's just such an interesting space, because I feel like all Black women are, not all Black women, obviously I haven't spoken to every single one, but it's just like, for the most part, Black women, like, we're like, yeah, like, we here, we get it, we got you. And then it's like everybody else, and I'm like, okay, yet again, it's Black women versus everybody else. But I did want to kind of throw that in there too, because when it was mentioned, I was like, that is a whole podcast in itself. But just yes to everything that was said. And it's really a reflection of, I feel like, a lot of the conversations that I've been having recently, but even some of the ones that we've had on this show, like earlier this season as well. And what time is it? Okay, I'm going to be mindful of time, because I know this can go on. And I have a couple questions, but I'm trying to figure out which one to prioritize. Okay, so I'm gonna make another pivot here. When we talk about kind of like our friendships, our like women-centered circles and communities, our relationships, and how like women are very grounding for us, and so on and so forth, even as it relates to mental health and well-being, as we just spoke about with the Olympics. One of the things that we haven't really touched on is accountability, and how our circles, as much as they motivate us and inspire us and like are magic for us, we all as people are going to have different spaces in life where we need to do better, be better, take accountability for our actions and our thoughts and our feelings. And how, do you define accountability? Let me say that first. And then how do you and or your circle like hold yourself accountable, and what would be I guess, if you have any, doesn't, not that you have to, but if you have any advice or tips or just recommendations for people who are going through that process. So I know that's like a lot of questions, but accountability, how do you define it? How do you hold yourself accountable? Or how do your friends hold you accountable, and what would be your recommendations?
So I feel like I see this on the fake woke Instagram accounts talking about, when you have a goal, you have a vision, you don't need to tell anybody, you need to stay down and keep your head down and be silent, da, 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 da. And I'm just like, as a believer, as a woman of faith, that's like the thing you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to have this vision or this goal and just keep it to yourself and not tell anyone. I'm not saying go tell everyone, but you have to understand the people that are also rooted or equally yoked. And that's something that I'm learning, that I need to be vulnerable in this moment and share what I'm believing and share what my goals are, share this vision that I have. Like, again, you can't tell everyone, not everyone's going to understand the dream. So there is value in recognizing who your party friends are, who your visionary friends are, who maybe you have them all in one. But I would say that it's important to tell people you're not supposed to be isolated. You're not supposed to be isolated as humans, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable with yourself and then also with your friends is so important. And that's something that I've learned. As far as accountability, like, I don't know, that goes back to that lovingly, you need to read me for filth. I'm telling you something, I want you to check in. I'm coming to you with check-ins. And if I need to do better, let me know. I have this thing I do with one of my friends called my flows, goals, and grows. So my goals of the week or the month, whatever I'm trying to pursue, my grows, the things I fell short on. Like I simply just did not open the Bible app this week, like different things like that. And then my glows, the things that I accomplished. So my 3 G's, it really helps me. But you have to tell people, you have to tell the right people or the right person that goal and that vision. Otherwise, like, you're just going to be out here alone by yourself. And we all need encouragement at some point in our life, at some point in our journey. And we simply just cannot rely on ourselves for that all the time.
I like that. You see your goals, your grows, your Glows.
Glows,
Okay.
yes. It's a tongue twister, yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah,
I'll let everybody else go. Yeah.
That's good. I'm not just thinking on that. I feel like I define accountability as record keeping without an agenda. It's just like having the story. Because I feel like what I really struggle with is remembering when I've like come to a crossroads before. And so what I like end up doing in conversation with, with you, Abby, or with my sisters, you're like, we've heard you say this before. Like, you're literally doing this again. What are you going to do differently? Mm-hmm. And it's not like ascribing of like, you did this poorly, you did this in a great way, because I feel like ascribing value makes it seem so much simpler than it actually is, and makes me feel like I'm isolating an aspect of myself. Like, this is good about Madison, this is bad about Madison, this could be better. And there's definitely room for that conversation, but I struggle not internalizing it and then doing nothing with it. So it's just like, here's the story to this point. What are we going to do this time? And then there's just so much more room to do it. I'm ascribing a value here, but do it the right way. Because you're like, I've done this before. Like, this is about skill building. This is about, like a lifestyle of longevity and abundance. Like, I want to achieve those things. So getting there requires me to analytically, but with compassion, look at the versions of myself before up to this moment. And this is what we were talking about before. Like, I definitely don't think of my past self or my future self as like linear. I think I'm all of them at the same time. Like, I wouldn't be here without 12-year-old Madison or 14-year-old Madison, but like, God, someone should have told her those side bangs were not it. And like, I don't look like that anymore, but I now know that. And without ascribing judgment or hatred, we will never do that again. Future Madison can rely on that with no judgment, but knowing that that won't be a part of her story in the future.
I love that.
I love that so much. Yeah, I think accountability really is just looking inward and assessing yourself like consistently. Like, sometimes you just have to sit down with yourself and understand, like you said, we're not linear. So just seeing where you've gone, where you're going, and everything like that. And like holding yourself accountable really in like a lot of different areas of your life. Like, what you say you're going to do it. But if you don't do it, that's also okay. Like, in a way, and just looking at it through that lens. But I think it's also having people around you that aren't necessarily like your yes people, like who are constantly just going to tell you like what you're doing is right all the time. Like, no, like, you really need people who are willing to, one, call you out, but like, because they love you and they want to see you doing better, and that you have that same like compassion and same hope for them as well. But people who will tell you like, you've been doing this consistently, like, what's going to change for real? Like, what is going to change? Or like, when talking about your goals, like people who you can trust, who are like, okay, like you said, like, I know Abby and I have conversations where we're like, oh yeah, we're working on this course. And it's like, okay, but what have you actually done? Like, what, like, let's put a date to it. Like, let's hold each other accountable. Mm-hmm. And it's really having those people who are rooted in the same values as you, and who are invested in you and you're invested in them as well, where you can kind of just walk through that together. I think that's what accountability looks like. I don't think it's something that you just go through alone. And I think that's really important to hone in on, but it's also you doing the work for yourself and looking inwardly and being like, all right, who am I and how can I hold myself accountable? And some methods on that is journaling. I think sometimes when you write things down and you're able to go back and see where you were in the past and just kind of get your thoughts out on paper, that's been really, really helpful.
Right, and write the vision and make it plain.
Make it plain.
Literally, yes, all of that. I feel like accountability to me is like, or at least my friends holding me accountable is like fixing my crown without having to let everybody know it was crooked, like in the first place. And because I think there's a fine line between like also too when like you need like help with a friend versus like gossip as well. So definitely when they're able to be like, hey, look, like pull me aside, you're not looking too good right now. Like, and I know that's not your intention. And I think like doing it with love, I know someone was saying that earlier, like kind of not doing it in a way like I'm not trying to read you, like I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to say like because I love you and because we have these conversations and I see the fullness of who you are, you're not acting in your best interest right now. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's very apparent to those of us who are, close to you. And I've also had to acknowledge to the way that I hold my friends accountable, because I'm a very direct person. And I'm like, look, okay, it is what it is. But I also have certain friends that are like very, very sensitive. And like they can take that as like a hit, even though like it's not intended that way. So I'm also learning to, one, allow people to somewhat exist in the realm of what they think is okay. Like if you ask me, I'm gonna give you my honest opinion. But if you don't ask me, sometimes you're just gonna have to kind of like learn it the hard way. And two, I am understanding about how to like help people discover their own place of where they need to be. Like it's not necessarily up to me, because a lot of times we can hear things from other people and be like, they don't know. But when we experience it ourselves, we're like, okay, like, and then you can come to the conclusion a lot more wholly and conclusively. I was talking to my cousin about that last weekend. And she was just like, sometimes it's just about asking the right questions. There's some questions that people aren't asking themselves, and there's some questions that like that's a place where God's put you in their life to be able to like kind of allow them to have some self-awareness and introspection for them to lead themselves to that understanding. And then like not discounting, because pretty much all my friends are people of faith, like not discounting the role of the Holy Spirit in their lives to be able to give them the conviction as well. So I've definitely found that to be kind of my current method of practice. I'm definitely okay, this is where you say you want to be. This is where you're at. Like, let's ask some questions to kind of get there. And, you can develop along the way kind of like where you want to be. And so I just, in return, like that's what I expect my friends to do with me, of just, hey, look, you're cool. We love you. I just want you to know this is how you look. It might not be what you're intending to do, but this is how you look. And so what do we need to do to fix that? How can I support you in fixing that? And I take that so dearly. And for me, it's like that really is the measure of some of like my intimate relationships and my friends' ability to hold me accountable and really push me to be the best version of myself that I can be. So I definitely relate with what everybody was saying, because I need like all of that in my life to be the best version of myself. But I love this. I'm going to ask one final wrap-up question. I guess I'll ask, I'm going to give you an option. You can answer one or the other, or if you're really, feeling spicy, answer both. And I just want to be mindful of time. So feel free to take your time answering it, but this is going to be the last question that I ask. So what do you enjoy most about being a Black woman? That is one of the questions. Or if you could wish one thing for the generation of Black girls and women coming after us, what would it be? So either what do you enjoy most about being a Black woman? If you could wish one thing for the generation coming after us, what would it be? And I know those are big questions, so you can take a minute to think on it.
This just made me teary-eyed. So I don't know why. I just like felt some type of way real quick. So,
I love asking big questions.
Holy crap. I'm going to do the second question first.
Okay. We answering both. Okay, cool. Come on first.
I want them to realize the value of rest. Rest without ceasing. Rest without justifying to anybody. Rest because you want to, not because you think you deserved it, not because you completed all 10 things on your to-do list, but you should have stopped at 5. I want them to be comfortable with resting, whether that means taking a nap in that moment, saying no to the big project that you think is going to put you ahead, because there's always going to be another project. Just like being comfortable with being, and not always feeling like the need to do, the need to try to please other people, the need to be strong. I just want them to let go and be and rest. If you're thinking about being a Black woman, I think it hit me because growing up in Northern Virginia, going to a private school with the 1%ers, I struggled with my Blackness a lot. I struggled with being emotional without feeling like, oh, I'm going to be the angry Black girl. I struggled with asking for help because I always wanted to be independent. And just really grappling with those stereotypes unnecessarily placed on me. So I just love everything. I love how, I think Madison said it, where we kind of understand what's up without having to open our mouths, just how we have the responsibility of empowering others. I think I'm paraphrasing this quote by the vice president, but she basically said, you need to use your voice all the time because other people are applauding you that you don't even realize yet. And that when you're able to use your voice in a room that might not be meant for you, you're making it easier for the next person. And I just feel that sense of responsibility as a woman and as a Black woman. And it's just beautiful. I don't know. It's just being a Black woman is beautiful. And I'm recognizing the value in that beauty now. I just wish I had that earlier in high school, but everything's a journey. We're not linear.
Amazing to all of that. I'm going to go with the second question first as well. And what do I hope for future Black girls in the generation to come? And this goes back to my younger self as well. And I said this earlier, but saying no is just as powerful as saying yes. And I want younger Black girls to know that. And I want them to feel that in every aspect of their life, just because, you know, growing up, it's not the image we had, and we didn't see that happening a lot. That wasn't much of a conversation. Mental health has kind of just become a conversation the past 5 years, where a lot of us have had to start to understand our own traumas and unlearn. And I really just want them to be able to grow up having those conversations, being rooted in communities with other girls where they feel like they can have those open conversations and learn that, you know, this is life, and you should just enjoy it and be in the present. And yes, have your goals and whatever your mission, whatever that may be, but it's also okay to just exist. And I feel like we've always been put in all these types of boxes. And so I think that's just something I really hope for the future generations, and that they know that whatever dreams that they have can still be achieved, but it doesn't have to be at the cost of their health and their mental and all of that. So that's what I really, really, really hope for future generations. And I think that what we've been seeing happening in the past year is really shining a light on that. And I'm really grateful for that, even though people are taking hits. I think it'll be for the greater good. And what do I love about being a Black woman? That is a question. I mean, everything. I mean, I think we know it's like Black women versus everyone, but at the same time, like just being a Black woman, like you just understand your power, like being next to another Black woman, being in this conversation, it's something you can't describe, like for real. Like Black women are just genuinely so magical, and I'm just so, like, I wouldn't want to be anything else, you know, like that's the facts. And also this goes back to growing up too, but definitely grew up not embracing what it was to be a Black girl, just especially growing up with like predominantly like people and going to Syracuse and being in a PWI and just being in all these different spaces. I think especially when I left home and went to college, like I made it really a focus. And I think I started understanding what it meant to be a Black woman, and understanding the power that comes from that, and the love that comes from that, and the safe space that comes from that. Like you can't describe it, you can't explain it. It's just something that you have to feel, and it's like the connection. And it's just seeing how Black women can move and shift entire entities of people and things. And it's just, I don't know, I'm grateful. That's how it feels to be a Black woman. I'm grateful to be able to be in that space and exist like this, even though we deal with so many different battles. It's just something. And I think what I love too is how much like Black women are going to ride for each other to the end. Like if no one's going to ride for you, a Black woman is going to ride for you, and it's knowing that. And so I think it's just the experience and the sisterhood and all of that. It just, I love being Black, and I love being a Black woman especially. So I'll end it on that.
I love that.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to follow those because, like, how do you say anything better than that? But yeah, so I'll go in the same order. I'll answer the second question first. I just really want Black girls to feel enabled to, like, sit still and look pretty. And I don't even mean that flippantly. I just mean, like the Cleopatra, Nefertiti, Helen of Troy style, where you're sitting on a chaise and launching ships, like, with your mind. Like, you don't have to do anything to expect abundance. Like, we don't have to toil to be as amazing as we are. And I want that for me. I'm not even talking about the next generation. Like, I want to be able to sit and be like, that was enough for today. You're all welcome. That I sat up. I want that for us. We deserve that. Like, we have been propping up this world since the moment that we got here. And we're still doing it. And I think it's time that we trade shifts. I think it's time to take a break. So that's what I want for Black girls to come. And then what do I love about being a Black woman is the fact that I can sit still and look pretty. There's something about being the OG. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't get
You're on this dying right now.
It's like, you just
the
can't get
blueprint.
better than this. Like, Black Girl Magic became such a commercialized, like, whatever, but it's so true. Like, you cannot bottle it up. Like, you pop one out and this is what you get every single time without fail. There are no flops except for maybe, what's her name, Candace Owens. Like, that might be a flop.
It's a couple of them. Yeah, they can. Yeah, she can go.
They're not flops. Her edges are still laid, so not a flop. You know what I'm saying? But for real, like, there's just something about just like, to what you were both saying, like, I just wish I knew. I wish I knew at 14, because like, the way people got over on me is because I didn't know, and it will never happen again. I wish I knew then what I know now and what I'm still learning. Because there are days where I'm not convinced. There are days where I feel like sitting still and looking pretty really isn't enough. But I don't know, like, when you hear things on the radio or you're on TikTok or you're on Instagram and you're just inundated with duplications and replications of what is you are at your core, it's just like, it's hard to get around the thought that like, wow, like, I don't even really have to try that hard to be what everyone wants to be. And they're telling me that I do because they need my money. If it weren't about the money, then that conversation wouldn't even be on the table. And just like having to live in that and believe that and having that affirmed by other Black women across generations, like walking into a grocery store and like seeing an older Black woman, like, you just know what that interaction is going to be like. There are just guarantees that come with Black womanhood. There are guarantees, and it's because we're the blueprint. And we just, people put up originals in museums and they don't touch them, they encase them. And like, that's what I want. I am to be encased. I am to be admired. And all because I'm a Black woman. I won the lottery. You just can't get better than that.
Y'all, the way I feels right now.
Yeah, this is challenging my like Aquarius energy, because I really am about to cry.
Like, the chills are running up my body.
No, because that was really it. When you said like sit pretty, like, or wait, how did you specifically phrase it? Because that needs to go on the shirt.
Look pretty.
Sit and look pretty. Amazing. That, and like, because what I was gonna say in terms of the second question is that I want the next generation to be comfortable and liberated to exist in the versatility of like who we can be.
Ooh.
And like, that really is to your point, like, you're like, I don't have to do anything for abundance. Like, I am abundant innately. And to the point I was making earlier, like, understanding that, like, okay, with God ordered steps, like, nothing is impossible to him. Like, I understand the magnitude of who he is. So I understand the magnitude of who I am and who he made me to be. And to your point, it is a lottery ticket, because I can't imagine being anything else. I really can't. And, no shade to anybody else, but like, I'm sorry to that man. Honestly, it's very great gowns, beautiful gowns over there, but like, very much the blueprint here. And I am so appreciative of the experience of my mother and her sisters and my grandmothers and their sisters, and what that means to the core of who I am and what I've been able to become because of that. Alice Walker has a piece of, it's a collection of prose called In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. Netflix used the title like In Our Mother's Gardens and like that special that they had, but it's one of like my favorite pieces by Alice Walker, because it really just speaks to like the breadth of who Black women are. But in her ideation was, okay, well, who would my great grandmother be if she didn't have to go through what she did in terms of the racism that she experienced in the South? Or who would she ask in the actual, like writing that she does of who would Phyllis Wheatley have been if she weren't actually enslaved first, because we knew how great she became and she was enslaved, but like who would she have been if she had the full versatility to be as creative as she wanted to be. And so I kind of, my wish for the next generation of Black girls is within that, to be the fullness of who they've been called to be without the restrictions of other people's opinions or just foolishness, or a self-imprisonment that's really perpetuated by patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism that just like really suppresses our ability to be comfortable in who we are. So that's the second question. And then I'd say that the first question is, I love that now that I'm walking more so into that space, that I'm realizing the fullness of like who Black women are, and I'm realizing the fullness of who we can be, and I've already realized, but continue to appreciate the gravity of my Black women centric communities, as well as with understanding the magnitude of who God is, of the privilege and the blessing of what it means for him to have made me a Black woman, even with the stressors that we have, and with the just social misalignments that get placed on us. We still are just, and I'm inherently grateful, but we're still inherently blessed just to be able to be in this existence. And I'm always reminded of like the kind of, to what you were saying earlier, Madison, about like we really are like the light is being shed on us of like what's next. People are looking to Black women. And when I think about just how magnificent and open and just wildly amazing like how God is and how he can do literally anything, I'm always drawn back to the story of like the parting of the Red Sea. And I really think about like, okay, sea, it's a body of water. We know like water takes the shape of a container. So I'm like, how wild is it, God, that like you literally took water and like split it and like made it stay in a space where like it's not gonna, group back up for people to be able to walk through that. And like what he always reminds me is like, if I could do that for my people, what makes you think I can't do that for you? What makes you think I can't do that for the next generation? And I think about like the bounds of Black women in that regard. Like there really are no bounds, because like with a God that does that, and with just the blessing that I feel like he's placed on Black women in particular, what can't we accomplish when we recognize like we serve the same God that like does things like that? We serve this gravity defying, just awe-inspiring vessel. So I'm just really enjoying the fullness of myself and the fullness of who I am in Christ, and as it relates to my identity as a Black woman, because I am centered more than I ever have been, and I feel like my friends are as well, and I feel like I'm touching my community more than I've ever been able to. So I'm excited to continue to be able to do that. But yeah, I loved all those answers. I am so excited that you're able to do this. I really do appreciate everybody's time. And before we close out, how can people reach you or find you if people want to follow up or get any involved in any projects you want to plug, anything like that?
I'm on Instagram. That's pretty much it. But I'm always looking, honestly, like community is the only thing that I care about. And so like reach out if you want to reach out. My handle is like _ Madison A White 27 or something like that. We'll figure it out later. But yeah.
Yeah. Same Instagram. My Instagram's at Jayla Goodloe. And I am going to plug in one group that I work for, or one platform. It's called Melanin Moi. They're dope, building a great community. So that's at Melanin Moi, MOI. So,
and then you can follow me on Instagram, Breana _Gabrielle, and then follow the Sisters with Ambition Instagram, which is just Sisters with Ambition. So yeah.
Love that. I already know where y'all can find me. So I don't have to plug myself. But yes, thank y'all again. Thank you so much for coming. This was a perfect ending to my first season, and I just appreciated all of the insights and all of the camaraderie. So thank y'all so much.
Yeah,
thanks for having us. We do this again. You got to bring us back for part 2.
Oh, for sure. I'll let y'all bring the questions next time. I know I had the big ethereal questions, but we can talk about whatever. I'm here for it.
just to chit chat. But yeah, no, thank you for having us.
Awesome.
This is amazing. I'm like walking away with just
like
hi.
Truly, I'm black and I'm proud.
Truly. I'm gonna go sit pretty.
Yeah, girl, go sit pretty.
I need it on your canvas or on a shirt. I just need it everywhere.
I mean, it's like that's the only thing that's worth doing is sitting still and looking pretty. Why work any harder? We do not have to suffer. We just do not have to suffer.
We don't have to.
We do not have to suffer. That's the mantra. We do not have to suffer.
Have to suffer. I love it here.
Thanks, y'all.